the vast majority of attacks are financially motivated, and so it's an economics consideration. It's
Follow the
return on
money.
investment. That's exactly it. So they're most of the time looking for some sort of extortion or something that, they're looking for, like ransomware attacks, pay us or else we'll encrypt all, or else we won't decrypt your data,
Mm.
or, pay it. We have your data, pay us, or we're going to let all your clients know. And so that they are cyber criminals for the most part. Now there are some exceptions with hacktivism for, political motives and
Yeah.
cyber warfare and stuff, but for the most part, financially motivated, and they're looking for the quickest path to money. So whatever they can do to get a financial gain, get somebody, and that means typically somebody pay them in a cryptocurrency. That's what they're after.
Hey, Grampian Nation, you guys know we love our vets. Our military is more precious to us than just about any other sector. Today, we got a Green Beret coming at you. Hang on.
In 2013, I coined the name Grampian, and I gave it to your host, Jim Tracy.
Hey, Zach Fuller, welcome to the Grampian. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm doing outstanding. I appreciate it. I'm really excited to be here. I just feel blessed with the caliber of people you've had on your show. Looking forward to diving in here.
Wow, you're up there. You're up there as well. We actually met in person, which is kind of unusual because we go all over the country, all over the world, really. And you and I met in person at the Air Club in Boise, and that just kind of sparked something. And I heard Green Beret, and I'm like, wow. But before we get into that, tell us about that. Where'd you come from? Where'd you come from?
Yeah, about me, I'm a Christian, a husband, a father of two little girls, live here in Boise, outside of town a bit in the country, and had the kind of an interesting journey, I think, a little bit unconventional. It was, if we're talking more career path and interests and things, I had started out as a kid. We moved to Arizona when I was young. I was about 10 years old, and I started spending a lot of time on computers in the summer because when it's 115 degrees outside, you don't want to spend a lot of time outside. So I was spending a lot of time on computers, and that turned into hacking the networks and locking the teachers out of their own systems and getting kicked out of computer class a lot. Now, luckily back then it wasn't go to jail like it is today. It was more of a slap on the wrist, but transitioned that into something a little bit more, I guess, a little bit more productive in a way. Started building websites for companies when that was a brand new thing. You were cutting edge as a company if you had a website at the time. And so I was doing that. My dad handed me the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, if you remember that one.
Sure.
And he said, read this, it's dead on. And I read it, and I got hooked on business and entrepreneurship, and took off from there, just doing all kinds of different business ventures and things throughout the years. And that's grown into the world of cybersecurity where I am today.
Wow. So you moved to Arizona from where?
Moved from California. That was
Okay, from
Northern California, Monterey Bay area. So grew up in the ocean, freezing cold water, swimming in the surf, all that kind of stuff, and then went to the desert.
And then to the desert. So that was a bit of a culture shock up there too, though.
It really was. It was a whole different world, and it got me into some new things though. I took up mountain biking, for example. I did a little bit in California, but I really got serious. I used to be a competitive archer as a kid, so I'd go around and pretty highly competitive. I wouldn't accept anything less than first, right?
That's strange,
and I did,
man.
yeah. So I'd won some state championships and stuff in California, and then later in Arizona. But then I took up mountain biking. That kind of replaced things. I got into some more of the desert sports as I got older. That turned into shooting and four-wheel driving and stuff like that. Yeah, but Arizona's great, but yeah, we lived there off and on for about 15 years, middle school and high school there, in the North Phoenix, Scottsdale area, and then went off to University of Colorado at Boulder after I graduated high school.
Go Buffs!
And I was there. Yeah. So I was there for 2 years. I joke, I finished in 2 years because I said I'm finished, and I left. And what was really driving me was what, to your earlier point, being a Green Beret. 9/11 happened when I was in high school. So that was digging at me. I was in college. I was doing fine. I was doing my work, partying a lot and stuff like that. But it wasn't really the challenge I was looking for. It wasn't the life-changing thing that I had felt called to do at the time. And since 9/11 happened in high school, I was seeing all these people out overseas, Iraq and Afghanistan on the news fighting the fight. And I really felt called to go there. I didn't know why at the time, but I'd always been interested in that world. I found out there's a path into the special operations community from being a civilian. It used to be that you
Hmm.
had to be in the infantry or something for a number of years, and then you could
Yeah.
apply. And they were getting strapped so thin with deployments all over the world and counterterrorism operations that they opened up what they called the 18 X-ray program. And so, in University of Colorado, a buddy of mine he was in ROTC, and he introduced me to that program. And I did a bunch of tests and was able to go into the program and get started. And so after my sophomore year in college, I left and I went into basic training, airborne school, and then the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare School
Yeah.
from there for another 2 years.
Jumping out of perfectly good airplanes. Okay. So tell us a little bit more about the 18 X-ray because you ended up as 18 Charlie, right?
Correct,
Give
correct.
us,
A
give it.
special forces engineer.
So people think, that when they think about Green Berets, they think about the song from the 60s and 70s. I think it was from the 60s.
Yep.
But that is a little bit accurate, but it's a little bit kind of blown up because you're the tough guys that also change hearts and minds, right?
Yeah, I joke we're the the smartest guys in special operations, right? That's probably not true for me personally, but we got a lot of brilliant guys in those units. Yeah, we are a bit different than all the other units in that our first focus is really around intelligence. So what a lot of people don't understand is that they're back in the World War II timeframe. We had the Office of Strategic Services. Right now, these are the guys that would, jump in wearing German uniforms and go. I mean,
OS.
gather intel, slit throats. I mean, these were hardcore dudes. So the Office of Strategic Services was doing all this clandestine work and everything like that. And that ultimately formed into really two branches, the CIA and the Green Berets, or the US Army Special Forces is the formal name. So yeah, it wasn't till John F. Kennedy that the Green Beret actually became a nomenclature, and they're the name, they're the reference for the unit. But all these guys were wearing these kind of stood out. They're always a little bit of the odd ones in the group, right, compared to the rest of the conventional units. So
Some people would
CIA
say
and
the cool ones in the group.
well, yeah, long hair, beards, all that kind of stuff is what it eventually turned into. And
Right.
it's it was an amazing group of people, because yes, there's combat. You have the conventional operations, and you've got direct action missions and things like that, special reconnaissance, but there's also a huge part to human intelligence operations in all this. So I've heard the statistics. I don't know, I mean, 97% of statistics are made up or something like
Yeah.
that. So but I've been told that 80 to 90% of all the intelligence in Iraq and Afghanistan was actually sourced from the Green Berets, from the different special forces teams on the ground. And I could see that because we're the collectors, right? We're there fighting the fight. We're engaging with the enemy. We're not only through interrogation of captured enemy fighters, but also elicitation, working with village elders in some of the more friendly spots and gathering intel. We'd write up these big reports, send them out through the different intelligence agencies. A lot of that goes and gets kind of collected and analyzed in DC. The CIA's analysts and such there, and then they would send back information to us based on what they're seeing across the area, because we're the boots on the ground. Our lens is very focused on that certain area, that specific region that we're in. So we
Sure.
want to know all the people, all the players. We're hunting down the IED facilitators and doing things like that. There's one I never did get, and he blew me up, and I'm still pissed about it. But but yeah, it was it was really, really fascinating. So there's a lot of mental aspect to that in terms of that side of the business. Now there's another side, which is foreign internal defense, right? So we'll go to places like Colombia and train up the Colombian special
Mhm.
forces, and help equip their soldiers, and well, really all over the world, a huge number of countries across the world. Our particular group was really focused on Central and South America when it wasn't in Afghanistan. That was
So how many deployments?
that's really the mission.
Yeah, how many deployments did you encounter?
I did two overseas, yeah. So two over in Afghanistan, and so I was there through parts of '07, '08, and '09.
Okay, pretty hot
And
time.
yeah, it was first deployment. Was I got everything I was looking for as going into the army. As a 20-something-year-old kid, we constant fighting after we left the wire. It was in the Helmand province there, which is a real rough area, probably one of the hottest spots at the time. It was, and I don't know how deep you want to go, but it was certainly an adventure. Half the team got Purple Hearts. They plussed us up with more guys because we first went in with 8. We didn't even have a full ODA, which
Yeah.
was supposed to be 12 people. We had 8, so we're always outnumbered, outgunned, but just a phenomenal experience. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It helped shape who I am today, and the people I got to work with were, I mean, just world class individuals, and it really screwed me up because I'm doing this in my early 20s, and when I got out, I thought that that's how the world functioned. I thought that
Mm.
everything just would work like a special forces team. Like if somebody tells you they're going to do something, there's no checking in to see if it got done. It just,
Automatic.
you could bet your life on it. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't, and I took a lot of that for granted because I didn't have a good basis of understanding of how the rest of the world really works. And so, working with those guys was absolutely, absolutely amazing. I mean, just the camaraderie, we'd be in 3-day long gunfights with the Taliban, and somebody, we're tired, we're just hungry, thirsty, just beat down, and somebody just cracks a hilarious joke over the radio, out of nowhere. It's like that's the how these guys were. And so it was really a blessing and an honor to be able to work with them, and certainly transform my outlook on life. And yeah, going to war, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I'm also grateful for the experience because as much as you see, the evil and the suffering and the pain, you also see the contrast between the good in the world and the love people can have for each other when they're putting their lives out there and putting themselves in harm's way. So it was really a incredible learning experience for me
All right.
at that
Well,
time.
Zach, from all of us at the Franklin Nation, thank you sincerely for your service. We are indebted to you, and we're grateful.
Well,
Now
thank you.
we're gonna move. We're gonna move beyond that. We're gonna go. Hey, Zach, you decided that you're gonna go into private equity or real estate or financing or something, some crazy thing that's not really a lot like shooting bad guys.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the guys in that world, I mean, you work so hard to get there, and you're at that point, it's almost like a PhD in unconventional warfare, so a lot of people stay in the unit and they retire. A bunch of the guys that I was on the team with that started when I did are now sergeant majors, and then they're retiring and stuff like that. And so it's really cool to see that. I'm grateful we have people like that out still, fighting the fight. And but I had never gone in with the intent to be a lifer. I went in with the intent to do my enlistment, serve the country, and and really a lot of it was personal, right? Like I mentioned, I needed to get something different. I needed that challenge. I think, to prove to myself at that point that I could do something incredibly difficult at that level and
Hmm?
function with the best. And if I could do that, I thought that would help me out elsewhere in life later on. And it certainly has. So as my enlistment came to an end, I was thinking, well, I love business. I love entrepreneurship. It forces personal growth. There's always more to learn, always ways to improve. It brings people together. I really believe business is God's way of connecting people in a way that they wouldn't have a reason to connect otherwise. Relationships are created, and how we get to pour into each other and help each other grow is just such an incredible aspect. So I've always been intrigued by that. As my enlistment was coming to an end, I knew I was going to go back in entrepreneurship. At that point, everybody and their brother was building websites. It was very much commoditized, right? Technology had come a long way. And so I was going back into that and thinking, I was hearing everything that was going on through the real estate crash. So we're talking 08, 09 time frame. And so my enlistment ended in 2009. Really knowing nothing else, they said, well, if everybody's running away from real estate and saying how bad it is, that's where I want to go.
There's
Sounds
opportunity
awesome.
in crisis, right?
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, exactly. And I'm not even really thinking of it maybe that way, but just that, hey, there's the next challenge, right? If people think it's terrible, then that's
Mhm.
where I feel comfortable, in those environments. I went into real estate. I just read every book I could on it. I started talking to anybody I could around the base and like in town. So I'd go in, I'd talk to the bankers. I became friends with a local realtor who was also a real estate investor himself. He owned his own properties and he also did transaction stuff. He kind of took me under his wing and showed me the ropes. And so I was just asking for mentorship and support. And that's how I got started. And by the way, I think that maybe a lot of people getting started don't do that enough. That's one of those things you don't get what you don't ask for. And you'd be I think people listening, if they're getting started on a new path, be blown away how willing people at the tops of their fields are to help, because they had people help them get there.
Sure.
And so don't be afraid to reach out and ask. And that's what I did. I got into real estate, and it turns out that a buddy of mine from University of Colorado was living in North Carolina, about an hour and a half north of me at the time as I was getting out, and he was also interested in real estate and getting in real estate. So naturally, we started a business together. We moved up to just outside the DC area, Reston, Virginia, for about 6 months, and then later went over to Western Baltimore area, Columbia, Maryland area. We did most of our transactions in the Baltimore area, and we had met another couple who they had been flipping houses and stuff prior to the crash. They owned properties and all that, lost a bunch during the crash, did everything they could to make their investors whole, but they lost a bunch personally, and we're getting restarted. So the four of us actually ended up building two companies, and the first was doing creative transactions. So this was early 2010, late 2009 timeframe. So nobody really knew if we were at the bottom or anything like that, and people were looking for quick money, right? So they
Yeah.
were looking for flips and things like that. They didn't want to stay in anything very long. So we were doing wholesale transactions where we would, put a house under contract and then sell the contract for more, and make the difference. Or we doing things like lease options where we would take a fee for connecting buyers with essentially a rent to own or lease to own type scenario. And there were some other things. There were some tax incentives for kind of interesting things, land installment contracts and different things that were going on at the times. We were doing all these creative transactions, and investors, and it was I think a fairly standard entrepreneur story. We just about went broke trying to get this thing off the ground, and long hours. And I was, one of my partners and I were out there, at 2 a.m. in the snow, pounding in roadside signs. We'd write those chloroplast, take those chloroplast signs you
Yeah.
see on the side of the road, and
Oh
we'd
yeah.
write like, sell your house fast, or we buy houses and all that. We were doing that. We would put signs all over the valley, and then people would start. So those would be out till 1, 2 in the morning. We get those in at 6 in the morning. The phone starts ringing because people are on their commutes places, and they see the sign. Some are pissed off because we put a sign in the road. Others are excited to talk and want to know more.
Find my
So
house,
so it
please.
was exactly, yeah, it was a crazy time in the real estate world. And so we did that, started to get more transactions, started to get profitable, started to make some money back and get on our feet. And then investors around the country started to get wind of it through other connections, that people were hearing what we were doing and were like, what are you doing in this market, and these quick transactions, no money down kind of stuff. Can we spend a week and shadow you, or can we come pick your brain for the weekend or whatever? We didn't have time to do that because we were so busy with the business. So, but we wanted to share the knowledge. So we filmed everything we were doing. We were put our contracts online. We basically built a membership website. And, I mean, built it, from the apartment that my business partner and I were living in, and just set it up. I had that tech background, and we had this membership site. And then we had some of the real estate gurus that, sell from the stage and stuff, sell these programs. They were pitching it, and we would split profits. So we had a bunch of people buy into our membership program called
Very
Link
cool.
Options. Yeah, and that kind of freed us up to go back. We all kind of didn't enjoy living out there where we were. We were all from different places and kind of wanted to get back to our roots. And so eventually we were able to do that. And then I got restarted in Arizona in real estate in a whole nother realm.
True entrepreneurial story. And speaking of that, what I did forget to do when we started this is say Zach Fuller is the founder and the managing partner of Silent Sector Cybersecurity, which you have a partner in, but your team provides a whole suite of services to help businesses. Now, tell me if I get this wrong, because I don't even I don't know how to turn on it. So, but you help businesses protect themselves from threats, like legitimate online and even in-house threats that that really could cripple, if not take down, a business. Is that accurate?
That's exactly right. We help them build formal cyber risk management programs to protect against threats and defend themselves, but also to align with compliance requirements. So a lot of industries now are forced to put
Yeah.
certain controls in place, and so the compliance piece is big. And then we also test the defenses. So we do what's called penetration testing, where we're actually hacking into the networks and the web applications and such, and we're showing our clients what a cyber criminal will see, and then helping them remediate those issues, so that, the goal is always that we find the problems before the cyber criminals take advantage of them.
So you act as an adversary um, in a real-time situation. So it'd be like you're trying to break into the bank and show the bank where the holes in their security is. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's a good analogy. We do that with the similar tools and techniques that cyber criminals are using, and methodologies.
Mm.
And we go in, and there are really three components when we're looking at this, right? It's not, a lot of people think it's just tech, but it's really people, processes, and technologies. It's always easier for me to get somebody to give me their username and password, let me in their systems, than it is to break through from a technical standpoint. So the vast majority of cyber attacks actually happen because of some component of the human element is missed, right? It could be well-meaning but unaware employees in a company let an attacker in. It could be the fact that the IT team is just strapped so thin, is very, very common in the space, right? They've got so much on their plate that something doesn't get configured properly. They miss something somewhere. It's impossible to be perfect in this world, especially as fast as everything's moving.
So explain to us some of the biggest threats that you see out in the marketplace, or say a middle market business, where there's this obvious gargantuan hole in their security and they don't even.
Well, the biggest reason companies get attacked by far, hands down, the biggest shortcoming is leadership's failure to make a decision to build a formal cyber risk management program, right? They have accounting programs, they have marketing programs, sales programs, they have operations defined with processes, all that. But in this day and age, it's critical to have the cyber risk management program built into operations, right? So I call it the technology tax, right? Relative to what technology brings to our world, it's been basically free for many, many years. And relatively speaking, of course, CFOs wouldn't agree when they have to sign the checks, but in essence, it's been free relative to the benefits it brings. However, we're finding that there's actually a lot more to it, because we've created this open environment, this free flow of information, there
Mhm.
are hazards with that. So first and foremost, organizations have to decide at the leadership level that we're going to do something about this. Some have their hand forced because they're in healthcare, financial services, or defense contracting, where they have to implement certain controls. But even that's not enough. Often that's just focused on a specific subset of information, not the company as a whole. So that's number one.
And that's even true
The
for
other,
telecom too. I mean, coming from a telecom background, the large carriers required us to protect ourselves. That provided an additional layer for them to protect their infrastructure.
yeah, it's critical. I mean, I would consider that critical infrastructure, right? I mean, that goes down. We're in a world of hurt. Since that's up there close to the power grid, and the
Yeah,
water system and all that. So it is certainly regulated, and we're in a technology based world.
yeah.
We essentially can't function without it.
And that's the compliance part that you talked about too. Is that accurate? That you have
Right,
to comply
right,
with
yeah.
their needs just to be able to do business.
Exactly, exactly. So
Okay.
a lot of companies are being more stringent on their supply chain in order to do business. They're sending big security questionnaires. We just did one that was over 800 questions, for one of our clients going up. This has an enterprise contract with a Fortune 500, and so yeah, there are stringent requirements in place for a lot of these organizations. They have to follow them. The problem is the IT team. And the second challenge is that IT people work. I mean, it is a thankless, brutal role. They don't really hear anything until things go bad. There's not a lot of, hey, great job, the network's up. They're only hearing about it when things are going down. They're constantly having to evolve and adapt to the needs of companies, and there's never enough people to get all the tasks done in any organization in the mid-market and smaller companies we serve. So they're always strapped thin. And so to add these different requirements on top of that puts them in a real tight spot. So that's what our team does, is come in, we augment, become an extension of their team and help with that. But the other thing that people miss is that their security is not it's not like a whack-a-mole approach where, oh, we'll go after this thing and, oh, we'll add this protection over here and all that. The other thing that people miss, going back to your question, is the fact that there are industry recognized frameworks, best practices, standards, things like that we need to follow, because if we're making it up as we go and a breach occurs and that ends up in court, as they often do, the opposing counsel is going to point to us and say, hey, you were negligent, right? So we've got to follow industry best practices. Do we've got to align with standards as opposed to the kind of make it up as we go type approach. Even if we've got brilliant technologists doing all the right things, we've still got to have, policy around it. We've got to have it documented. We've got to build a formalization around it and then test it, right? Make sure that our assumptions are correct. So
And all
we
this
could
happens while the bad guys are plotting new ways to break in.
absolutely. Absolutely. And we are too, right? Our team, we're always doing research and development. Our team, the segment of our team that does penetration testing, I mean, they're brilliant. They would be doing this stuff for fun after work if they weren't getting paid all day to do it in the first place. They'd come home from their day job, they'd be hacking in their labs, figuring out how to break stuff and put it back together.
Yeah.
And so they love it. It takes a unique kind of skill set, a unique and character to really want to dig deep into the tech and do that. But I've transitioned much more to the business side of the equation, but I tend to be the translator between the deep technical side and the executive teams and such that need it. And we've got to meet somewhere in the middle in terms of
Yeah.
aligning with the business objectives and
Sure.
achieving
Sure.
our goals.
So along comes 2020, and we've got this little thing called COVID, work from home. Now you have to allow unfettered access to mainframe computers and systems and technology, but these people are remote. What kind of challenges did that present?
It For us, it was more of guidance, direction, support from a security standpoint. So it was just a lot more stuff to consider, right? Because now we've got organizations that are sending people home and they're not necessarily equipped to do so, because a lot of times maybe the people are just sent home without a computer, for example. Well, logging into your company systems from your home device that your kids are, doing whatever games or social media or who knows what on. I mean, that's like just like a petri dish for viruses and things that get, so we had to make sure that our clients were putting appropriate controls that around the work from home environment. Now, I guess there's some silver lining in that a lot of organizations were already doing some sort of remote work. A lot of companies we work with have people out in the field there or different satellite locations, and they're used to coming in, through VPNs, and they had certain controls around it. So a lot of the companies we were working with were actually pretty proactive, but those that were brand new to this, it opens up a whole nother thing. So to go back to people, processes, and technology, we've got to have not only the technical configurations and how they're accessing the systems and through what devices really locked down well, we've also have to have things like what is acceptable. Now that we're in some cases having to blend, home computers and things like that with work environments, we have had to get better at drafting the policies and processes around doing that than educating the staff. So I think for IT people, of course, they had a big load on their plates. We're guiding, directing, supporting, looking at configurations and things like that of the systems. But a lot of it came down to also the training and awareness of the non-technical people in these organizations. They're just
Yeah.
not aware of what's going on. They think they log into a company's system, somebody else is handling security. They just kind of do what they want. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. We've all got to play a part in this.
So, what are the biggest industry sectors that you see that have the biggest holes? I mean, it's kind of like where's the biggest opportunity to help patch some of this stuff?
Well, there are certainly industries that are lagging. It's been refreshing over the last few years to see more and more companies truly being proactive rather than wait until they're forced to do something about it. But I think one is manufacturing operations. Manufacturing operations have a tremendous amount of catching up to do in general. Some are very proactive already, but those that aren't, they have challenges in that a lot of times the IT side was just kind of seen as a cost center, right? And then they just kind of do the minimum to keep everything running. Problem is you've got these machines, multi-million dollar devices and things that are no longer supported from the manufacturer, or the manufacturer of those devices is no longer supporting them with software updates. They're old, but they still do the job. So a lot of times it doesn't make sense to do those huge capital outlays to go retool and get up to the latest standards. So we've got to function in these environments that have deprecated systems that aren't adequately protected and can't really be. So we've got to put controls around that, segment them off into their different networks and put strong controls around them. And a lot of manufacturing companies are catching up with that. One of the things we're also seeing with clients in the manufacturing space, there seems to be, and I don't know if this is just from my, pretty small lens on the world, but there seems to be a lot of roll-ups and acquisitions going on right now across the manufacturing space. So what we've seen companies do is they'll go out and they'll buy a manufacturing operation overseas that's complementary to them, and they'll buy it with little to no foresight of what the actual risk is to the organization when they tie their systems together. And so we have to help them standardize, normalize processes across the board and help them better get that. But a lot of times the technical teams are kind of the last to know about these things. Like, hey, we're closing on this new, this manufacturing company with 300 employees down in Mexico.
Yeah.
That's happening in 2 weeks. So get ready. It's like, well, we should have been in long before doing the due diligence stuff. So
Yeah.
that's happening out there. Another industry is healthcare. Even though it's compliance regulated with HIPAA compliance, all they care about is the protected health information, PHI, from the patients. And the problem with that is you could take the rest of the company down, the PHI could be fine, but then you have an inoperable organization, right? So we've got to look at holistic security. Same thing there. They're dealing with millions of dollars of equipment that's not no longer supported, outdated systems and such that they still have to rely on.
Yeah.
I'd say those industries are probably, there are others like construction, that most of the construction industry is kind of still doesn't really care a whole lot. I hate to say it like that, but the cyber breach to them is could be detrimental, but it's not at the same level of like a software company where the software is their brand, it is their organization. If that goes down, they go, so but we all need to do a better job. A lot of good people are working on it, a lot of good people are trying, but we can't really sugarcoat the fact that we're still losing this war against cybercrime,
Yeah.
and we've got to do more. That's kind of what drew me into it, from coming from the military world and after being in real estate and then later into private equity for a bunch of years.
Yeah. So what do these bad guys gain from breaking into your company? I mean, say I run Acme Manufacturing and we're making widgets, like we're just killing them. I know what's at risk, but what do they gain from breaking into our system?
The vast majority of attacks are financially motivated, and it's an economics consideration. It's
Follow the
return on
money.
investment. That's exactly it. So they're most of the time looking for some sort of extortion or something that, they're looking for, like ransomware attacks, right? Pay us or else we'll encrypt all, or else we won't decrypt your data, or, we have your data, pay us, or we're going to let all your clients know. And so that they are cyber criminals for the most part. Now there are some exceptions with hacktivism for political motives and cyber warfare and stuff, but for the most part, financially motivated, and they're looking for the quickest path to money. So whatever they can do to get a financial gain, get somebody, and that means typically somebody pay them in cryptocurrency. That's what they're after.
It must be effective if they're still doing it, right?
Every time we pay a ransom, which I'm adamantly against, we are fueling the fire. And not from coming from me, but the various agencies out there will confirm that there is a good portion of this money from ransomware payments that's going to fund physical terrorism around the world, also increase drug operations and such. So when you pay a ransom, I mean, I hate to say it, but you might as well be, pulling the trigger yourself on some innocent people,
Yeah,
because
these are bad guys.
that's
These are truly bad guys, huh?
that's what it's doing. It's fueling the fire for it. Again, I take statistics with a grain of salt, but I saw one recently that said that cybercrime has, as an economy, has essentially surpassed drug trade and human trafficking. Both is the preferred method for monetary gain for criminals and nation state threat actors around the world.
Yeah. It's also widely known that these nation state actors like China,
Right.
inappropriate laugh. China have companies like Huawei that even the FCC and our friend Brendan Carr has said, hey man, they're collecting data at unprecedented levels on American businesses and citizens. And is that really such a huge threat that we should be paying attention to that as well?
It really is. And I'm not, a doomsday type person or anything like that. But the thing I worry about more than cybercrime is the disinformation campaigns and the psychological warfare that's going on here. Because if a company in the United States is breached, then they're still generally seen as the victim. Right. They were the victim of a crime. That's really unfortunate. If they are actually the victim of psychological operations and disinformation campaigns, then the public sees them as the enemy. And that's much harder to come back from. So when you see what China's doing, right, with its own social scores for its own people and all that, and
Yeah.
you have to have certain, and they're aggregating all this data. Well, because so much of our lives are online now, even those people that say, oh, I'm not on social media or whatever, if you're existing in today's world, you've got a big digital footprint, whether you realize it or not. It just sometimes you need to use some extra techniques and tooling to get to that, but it's out there. That data residue is out there. And by aggregating all of this, suppose they aggregate a bunch of data about all this, and they could give us our own social scores, right? Whether we want it or not, there will be people that look up and they say, hey, let me see what China says Zach's social score should be
Yeah.
based off of all his digital presence and what we see. So there's a huge component there. And I think a lot of that will feed into that world we've known for many years. Primarily it's been Russia that's been after undermining democracy. So a lot of the huge botnets and things that are trying to sway political campaigns and put people in, essentially fighting against each other and
Yeah.
creating all this all this
Friction.
fake news and everything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, whereas China's been very much financially motivated, right? So they'll go, break into an auto manufacturer and sit there for 3 years and wait till they're going to make a big order so that they can economically adjust, prices and do what they do for financial gain. So that's, and there are other actors, of course, Iran, North Korea, a bunch of countries out of North Africa have a lot of cybercrime at the epicenter of their economic development. But what happens is these companies, or I'm sorry, it's like a whole economy now, all the way down to like help desks and things.
Yeah.
You've got nation state threat actors with lots of resources, highly sophisticated workers developing the latest, greatest malware. That then kind of gets resold to cybercrime rings that will be more into the distribution and profit. And there's various tiers there as well. So then a lot of times the countries, they can use the cutting edge malware they develop for their own means first, right? Once it's been used, it's out there, they sell it down the chain, they kind of wash their hands of it. Right now, everybody else is using it against people in their own ways, and it creates this whole economy to the point where they've made it very convenient. If you want to pay your ransom, people will help you
Yeah.
out, they'll show you how to transfer your US dollars to cryptocurrencies and the whole nine yards. So
Sure.
it's really interesting what it's
Crazy.
become.
Crazy. So this is no longer what I would say is a perceived threat. This is an actual risk that's occupying a marketplace, and you're there to help businesses.
Yeah, I mean we're in it. I mean this fight has been happening for a long time and has cost the economy trillions of dollars. You look at all these rents. A lot of people think that if they're not in this stuff every day, they think that, oh, well, I hear about the hacks that happen because it's the big guys. It's like the MGMs or the Sonys, or we remember back to the Target breach and Home Depot, all big name brands that we recognize. Yes, those happen, but those are rare. It's the smaller organizations. If you go on certain state websites, the attorney general in some states will post all the breaches. So Indiana, for example, you go to the Indiana Attorney General's website, you can download spreadsheets of all the posts or all the breaches that have been reported to date. And when you look through those, you'll see some of the big names, but you also see, John's Leather Holsters,
Yeah.
.com or whatever. And, and it's these small mom and pop operations and everything in between. So a lot of the stuff never makes the news, but these companies are getting hit, and they've legally, in most states, they've got to report it. And there's certain requirements around that if, certain people are affected and so on, depending on the state. So it is certainly happening a lot, and it's unfortunate. We've got to do more. We've got to do more to protect our technologies because there is a lot at stake, and the adversaries really see it as a long-term war of attrition. It's very profitable for them. They have everything to gain, nothing to lose. So people ask, well, why don't we just hack back? Why can't we hack back? Well, when you understand how this world works, we're dealing with a bunch of people that on, their machines, they use what are called virtual machines, right? It's basically a full operating system contained within their laptop, and they can just wipe it and replicate it and do it again. They don't need so hacking back really doesn't do any good because they don't have really anything to lose, right? And what they do have is protected and funneled off through various ways, but they don't have all the data. They're not doing the type of business that we are. So hacking back doesn't really do us any good. I know there are situations where the government will take action, but that tends to be, and more physical action, but that tends to be more when it comes to the ties to terrorism and such.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
not as much for the smaller organizations getting
Yeah.
hit.
So silent sector security, where did the name come from?
I just thinking for names, thinking for what do we want to be? We're kind of one of the factors of it was as in the special operations community, we got to work kind of behind the scenes and doing things that some of our operations made the news, but it always said other coalition forces did this big thing, right? It never said who was behind it or whatever. So we got to work in kind of a murky, misunderstood world and kind of behind the scenes. And that was part of the allure of cybersecurity. I get to protect good people doing great things for our nation, those business people, those entrepreneurs, those technologists, all those people that help our economy drive forward. And so we thought, well, that's kind of a cool name. We're kind of behind the scenes, right? We help these organizations grow and thrive. We're really a business enabler. And so there's no real specific
That's a cool name. I mean,
tie to
silent
anything.
sector
So
cybersecurity. Awesome. So
Yeah, thank you.
how do they get in touch with the business at?
So you can reach out. Silentsector.com is the company website. There's web forms
Easy.
on there. You can meeting schedulers, all that kind of stuff. That's the best way to reach out. And I'm on LinkedIn. So Zach Fuller, Zach with an H. And yeah, I would love to connect.
So when we opened the show, you talked a little bit about your faith. What drove you to the cross?
Well, growing up, I wasn't Christian. I didn't really have any faith. I was really agnostic. My parents encouraged me to try different things, but I didn't grow up going to church. I did go to a church camp one summer as a little kid. I went to Sunday school and stuff as kids, but I never thought that was really for me. As why would I go do that when I could be out riding my bike or doing something, you know? Over time, I grew up, agnostic through high school into college, didn't really care. It's like, well, what, okay, I know some people do that stuff. Why would I need that? And I think when I was in college and I was just feeling really this deep calling to go into the military, go do something hard and really, really push myself to, the point of life or death situations. I was really called and I didn't understand why, but as we got into it after I graduated the Special Forces qualification course, which by the way, I had no business being a Green Beret. I was 135 pounds when I went into the Army. I was carrying weight on my back that was, more than that for miles. And I had gained some muscle and stuff. Now I had mountain bike race growing up, so I had some good endurance and cardio capacity. So that certainly helped. But yeah, I was super skinny, was super unassuming as a young kid. There's no practical reason I should have made it through all that, but I think God wanted me there. I recognize that now, but I got through the course. Thanks to him, I believe he wanted me there, and he and went to my team, and then went to combat my first deployment. First first time, I remember going out. Our very first mission was going out, and from one of the intelligence agencies told us we were going to be outnumbered 11-1. And
Mm,
I figured, wow, well, here we go. It's going to get real. And we went to where we thought we were going to engage with the enemy. It didn't happen there. On our way back, we got in a close ambush, and they had ambushed our Humvees, from a rooftop of a compound right next to us, and immediately snapped in action. Training kicked in. I didn't think. I just moved. I had a 249 saw, a light machine gun. I just, started trying to cut the guys down on the rooftop. We got out of the kill zone, or got off the X as they call it nowadays, and we got up. We took high ground, and we killed 22 Taliban that day. Our trucks had a bunch of holes and stuff, and miraculously none of our guys were hit. I was like, great. But now we know it's real. Now I've actually been in a gunfight. I know I've seen combat. This is for real now. As we progressed in that deployment, every time we would leave almost every time would be fights. And the rest, and as we got into it, we weren't so lucky. Like I'd mentioned, half the team got Purple Hearts. We had a lot of stuff go on,
yeah.
and they plussed us up, sent us new guys, all that. And so we'd go out on these operations, and we'd do our thing, come back, and I'd be in my tent, the tent at night, and be after we'd refit and everything, lay down. And I didn't when you feel like tomorrow might be your last day, and you feel like you have nothing else, living out of two boxes of gear. That's all, that, and living on a cot in a dirty tent, and really knowing nothing else. I just thought, well, if everything else feels like it could be gone or is gone, the natural inclination is to look up, right? Look to God. And so knowing nothing else, I just pray, and I just pray to Jesus, and I said, "In Jesus, what, would you just get our team through this, get us back, safe, have everybody live through it." I really didn't know the Bible. I was just that's what I had heard before. But the amazing thing is that, and the beautiful piece of all this is that Jesus always answers anybody who calls on the name of Jesus. He will show up in their lives, hands down. If they are open, if they want to have a relationship and even just call out to him for help, 100% he will show up. And so that's what happened. It wasn't immediately, it was later on in that deployment. We had gone into a particularly hairy area, fully Taliban controlled, all of that. We had been tasked to take some MARSOC out, the Marine Special Operations Command, which is a fairly new unit at the time, but took a bunch of force recon guys and stuff and scout snipers and stuff. Awesome dudes, phenomenal war fighters. And we were tasked to take them out and do this big operation. And really the only objective was to kill as many Taliban as we could. And after 3 days of fighting, I mean, they kicked our butts. It was not pretty. I'd lost a Navy corpsman as part of that unit right next to me. We got a bunch of guys full of shrapnel, all that kind of stuff. And that was just day one. And then, so 3 days of this, C-130s flying in at night, dropping pallets of ammo and new barrels for the machine guns because we melted them and all that. And so rough time, but because of what had happened, we'd drug what was left back of some of the trucks with the working ones and went to the nearest fire base. It wasn't ours. It was another one out in that region. Been sitting, I was still kind of hyped up on adrenaline. I mean, even though we'd been going just like crazy, it was just I was pissed off. I was really pissed off. I wasn't ready to just go to bed or anything like that, go to sleep. So I went out. It was pitch black, I don't know, maybe midnight or something, and I found an old cigar in my rucksack, knocked it out of the aluminum tube. I sat on the hood of a Humvee, and I just in this rage, just angry, frustrated, why did this happen like this, and all of a sudden the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, right, is actually versibly Philippians 4, I want to say 4:7, right? It hit me like a ton of bricks. And I didn't realize it at first, but I went all of a sudden to this just state of peace and calm and almost just enjoyment. It just transformed me. And the words, not audible words, but the words put in my head that were clearly not from me were, "This is the first day of the rest of your life." And I said, wow, God, that's you. That's you. That's you. You're real. And you are there and you are with me. And even though I didn't believe earlier in life, I was agnostic. I didn't think that that's what I needed. He hit me like a ton of bricks, and so clearly, so obviously him. And he still, every once in a while, I still get those, he will put words in my mind that are clearly not from me, and it's blatantly obvious. And so that's interesting. And that really started it. But I didn't really know how to articulate that. I didn't know what that was at the time because I didn't know anything about the Bible, really. I didn't know what, so I kind of kept it under wraps. I didn't really tell anybody. I just kind of went on my way, kind of went back to my ways. And it wasn't till a few years later, after I had gotten out and started going to church and such, that I realized that that's what that was. That was me being saved by the grace of God because I had called out using the name of Jesus. Now it makes so much more sense in context to me. Now that I've read the word, I understand it more and more. I still have a lot to learn, so much to learn. That'll be a lifelong endeavor. But yeah, it's just the most amazing thing, and what it's done for me, and the peace that it's brought me has just been incredible. After I got out, I wouldn't sit with my back to an open door window. I was always, I had when I would talk to people, they would ask if everything was okay, because I'd always be scanning back and forth and looking around. It's like, well, I was just wired tight, and
Yeah.
and then one day I was driving, I was doing business somewhere. I was driving through California, one of the highways in Southern California. I remember some business thing I was on, and all of a sudden it just hit me again like a ton of bricks. God just said, "Hey, you don't have to do that anymore. I got you." And yeah, that gone. And so many different areas, like the doors he's opened, the way I've been able to see things since then. It just, he can, even though I was still kind of back to my old ways for a while, he just continued to chip away at me, just like I still had a lot of anger and stuff like that, but he just over the years continues to chip away and I think hone me to what he wants me to be, so I can better accomplish the will that he has for my life.
Yeah. It's a continual process. I mean, we get saved, but we continue down that progressive sanctification and to seek to get better just because we got better. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. That's really powerful. That's a powerful testimony, brother.
It's my pleasure. Wouldn't trade it for the world.
All right. So on the Grampian, we acknowledge that somebody in our life has been a pretty big deal. And you've lived a big life, man. I look at this and I'm just like, I've got kids your age, and I still and I still look at you and I'm like, dude, you've lived a huge life already. What is one of those people? Who is it that you're going to give props to right now to say thank you because they have impacted you in such a significant way that you just want to say thank you?
Yeah. Yeah. There are so many people, first of all, for God and putting Jesus in my life, right. Bringing me into his kingdom and just being so graceful, even when I didn't deserve it. So that's always going to be number one in my life. I think if I were to look at it from a business and personal growth perspective, because of course my wife is incredible, way out of my league, intelligence wise, emotional intelligence wise, just sheer, stunningly beautiful, like way out of my league. So she's behind everything. I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for her. But if I look at it from a business and personal growth perspective, there's a friend and mentor of mine who unfortunately passed away recently. In fact, I'm about ready to head out to her celebration of life here, but Giselle Chapman is her name. And she's in Irvine, California. And she uh, had a way with people that is unlike anything I've ever seen. I call her the best people person I've ever known. Her story is incredible and just kind of she had taught me so much about how to connect with people. She can go into organizations where people are button heads and dysfunctional culture and all that, and she can bring it together, be getting people having the conversations they need. And it's always just out of love and respect for one another. It's really her approach. It's very, very biblical, I think. But she just taught me so much, and she would have this gift of helping people see things in themselves that they couldn't see on their own. They didn't recognize. She would bring things out of people. And not only because it was just a great thing to do and one of her gifts, but it also helped her create ultra high performing teams. I mean, she'd travel the country, work with CEOs, bring their companies to hugely profitable states, and she'd speak all over the country and all this stuff. So yeah, Giselle Chapman was absolutely phenomenal and still will always continue to be an incredible person in my life, just for all the meetings we got to have and the time we spent together and what I learned of what people are really about and how we should interact with each other, how we should just love and respect each other. I mean, just an
Awesome.
incredible walking example of that.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Zach. Thanks for sharing that. And thank you, Giselle Chapman, for investing in our new friend, Zach Folk. Hey, this is the Grampian, and we want you to keep chasing those Grampian-sized dreams. Thanks again, Zach, for coming on. This is Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
When you get an opportunity, subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcast.